Hey, this is Coach Shay with Alpha Girl Soccer Academy, and welcome to the Alpha Girl Soccer podcast show, where we aim to inspire, empower, and positively impact female athletes. Hey guys, welcome back to the show. On today's episode, I had the honor of interviewing Yael Averbuch, who is the creator of Techne Futbol. Yael had an amazing college career at UNC, where she won 2 national championships, set an NCAA record with 105 consecutive starts, and scored the fastest goal in women's collegiate soccer history. Her college jersey, number 17, was retired after her last season at UNC. After her sophomore season of college in 2007, she got her first cap with the U.S. women's national team against England at the Four Nations tournament in China. She then went on to play professionally for Sky Blue FC, Western New York Flash, Washington Spirit, Kansas City FC, and Seattle Reign. She started her own business while playing professionally called Techne Futbol, which is a training app designed to help players form an individual relationship with the ball like she has over the years. She also started the NWSL Players Association, which she currently oversees as the executive director. All right, I know you're going to love this episode, so settle in, get ready to take notes, and enjoy. Hi, Yael. Thanks so much for coming on today. So excited to talk to you, and I've had you on my list for a long time, so thanks again for taking time out of your day to come on.
Of course. I'm excited for the conversation.
Awesome. So before we kind of get into all the fun stuff today, I know most people listening already know who you are and know what you're all about, but if you just want to give my listeners a little bit more about you and Techne Futbol.
Yeah, sure. So I'm originally from New Jersey, which is where I live now. Grew up playing soccer here and had the dream from a very young age of being a professional soccer player. Went on to play college soccer at the University of North Carolina, and then had a 10-year professional playing career where I played all over the US and some time internationally as well. So really full experience playing a lot of places, including some time with the US women's national team, which I'm really proud of. And fast forward to today, I actually had to step away from playing due to some health issues, unfortunately, but still very involved in the game, working with the NWSL Players Association. And then also I started my own business a few years ago while I was playing professionally called Techne Futbol, which is an individual training app to help guide players in their training.
Awesome. So what was it like playing professionally and starting your own business? What was that experience like?
Yeah, I always tell people I had no idea what I was getting into. If I knew what it meant to start a business, I probably wouldn't have done it. So I'm glad I didn't know. But yeah, I kind of like had in my head that I had this grand vision for what I was going to offer, but in my mind, it was just going to be this like easy side project kind of thing. Like, I don't know why I thought that was even possible. So very quickly though, like it was, it could have been as many hours as I could possibly spend on it. There was never, I was never done with the work. So it was very comfortable to I had the flexibility while I was playing to still work really hard on it. But certainly since I stopped playing, it has become very full-time and full-time plus. So yeah.
Absolutely. So we'll get into Techne and that kind of things a little bit later on. But what was your experience like? And I don't know a lot about the selection process for the national team, but I'm very curious to kind of see what was your experience like with getting called up to the national team?
Yeah, so really it's an ongoing tryout process at all times. And that's what I think people kind of don't understand. They think you make the national team, but you never really essentially make the team for good. So it's always a tryout process. And there's a number of ways that players can get seen. I was kind of on the radar because I played on a lot of the youth national teams. And then in college, I was on one of the top college teams at the time. So I had that visibility. And then in starting my pro career in the US, I was playing with and against national team players. So in all of those ways, I was being seen and would get invited into training camps. And basically you get invited to a training camp if you're on their radar, and you can get invited from anywhere. Players can be seen at any point to get invited to a training camp. And then basically if you do well at that, you can have the opportunity to make a roster for a tournament or, a more major tournament like the ones we see on TV. But actually my first tournament I made the roster for was in China in 2007. So it was quite an experience. I think I was probably in a daze for half of it because I was just so overwhelmed with everything going on. But yeah, so that was kind of my experience in terms of how I initially got identified. But I actually never really solidified my spot in the way I would have liked to.
Mm-hmm. For sure. How old were you when you first got selected to play up?
Yeah, so I was a sophomore in college when I went to that first training camp and then got selected for the roster to go to China. And then there was some time between then. It wasn't like I was then invited to every single thing. There was some time where I wasn't involved, and I would get invited in for a little bit. Then I was cut and invited back in. And so for me, it was like an ongoing, like literally an ongoing tryout when I say that.
Yeah. So how were you able, because you were still in college, so how are you able to balance that with the national team duties?
Yeah, I mean, there's a challenge, but I think, for college athletes, you get used to missing class and still doing your work remotely and figuring out what you need to do. So it was always part of my school experience that I had to talk to the teacher, let them know when I was going to be away, do exams remotely with someone monitoring it, like all those things I think were pretty normal for me and the other players who were going through it. So I don't really remember it being too much of a big deal, but that being said, I think it probably was annoying to the professors and everyone back at school.
Yeah, they're like, oh, she's gone again. Yeah, you're like on their bad list. No, I'm
Yeah.
sure. So what was the main difference between the national level and the pro level?
I think it's kind of similar to when you take a step up from college to professional and then professional to the national team, is that there's just every single player, you have some college players who are very talented, but are not that serious or have like pretty serious weaknesses in their game, or, are still making it at that level just because there's a lot of college players out there playing for top college programs. And then you get to the professional level and there's significantly fewer players who make it. So if you take the top 100 college players and then put them at the professional level and add in some of the best internationals in the world, I mean, you're really narrowing the pyramid kind of. And then with the national team, again, you're narrowing the pyramid. So you're taking the best of the best from the professional level. And especially with the US women's national team, you're getting the best of the best in the world. So I would say that the big thing that struck me is that everybody at that level is the best in the world at what they do. Like, hands down, not like one of the best in the country. They are the best in the world at one or two, maybe three things. And then everything else, they're very proficient at. Like, no one's perfect. Everyone has their weaknesses. But the things that the players are good at, they are so good at. And that's what gets people, I think, to that top level.
Absolutely. So obviously you've played and you have been one of the best players in the world. And who would you say on the national team really was someone that you look up to, and maybe someone that kind of took you under their wing as a young player joining the team?
Yeah, wow. So there were a number of, I think the team has a really interesting and cool culture in terms of that. Like, it's very ruthlessly competitive, but at the same time, there is like, everyone's looking out for one another, and especially, the young players. And I can't remember too many specifics, but I did get some really good advice when I first started going in with the national team. And I forget who told me this, but at the time, some of the center midfielders were like Shannon Box, Angela Hucleys, Carly Lloyd was there. And so those were kind of the players who I was competing against to try to make the team. But at the same time, like, they were supportive in terms of trying to make sure everyone felt comfortable in the environment, because it helps the team if everybody can be their best. There's no need to like be competitive in the bad way. I think the competition was really positive. But somebody told me when I first went into camp is like, don't shy away, like, go for it. Basically, don't shy away. Don't be scared to make mistakes. Like, go all out. Because one, you never know if you're going to get the chance again. But also, like, you have nothing to lose your first time. There's nothing you could do that would be wrong. But if you can somehow show the value you do have to add to the group, that's hugely important. So I think that's what it is. It's not about not making mistakes. It's about showing, like, what is your one thing you do well that maybe can add to the group of all of these amazing women who do everything so well.
Yeah, I love that. So what would you say, and this might be a hard thing to peg, but what would you say your biggest success as a player was, whether it was college, pro, national level?
Ooh, for me, I think I was always really, this is an interesting one, because I was always really proud of my longevity as a player. Like, I played for a lot of years and really, knock on wood, but like, was fairly healthy in terms of not getting injured, like all the things that players normally hurt, your knees, ankles, like all of that was intact for me. I now kind of say it's a little ironic because I did have to step away because I have something called ulcerative colitis. It's a digestive thing, kind of like Crohn's disease. And hopefully no one listening actually has personal experience of it. But so now I'm like, oh, well, now that I say I had this longevity and I had to step away. But really, I think for me, like all through college and for the majority of my professional career, I was able to stay healthy and continue to get better throughout my career. And I think that is one thing I'm really proud of, like above winning any championship or making any team. I'm obviously really proud of my appearances with the national team. And that's something that like everyone dreams of. But for me, the fact that I think up until literally my last season I was playing pro, I felt like I was getting significantly better still. And that was something that was really important to me.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love that you said it's not about like the wins and the successes of making it to the top, but kind of how you developed and how you stayed consistent throughout that time. So that's really cool. So
no,
then
it's really true. Like people,
yeah.
sorry, but people always, it seems like people kind of BS when they say that, like, it's not about that, but it's true. It's like you win a championship and not that you're not excited and happy, but then you get out there the next day and it's the same thing again. So it's like, those things are important, but I literally remember feeling like that after winning something big. I would like the next day wake up and be like, okay, well, that's over. Now we have to do something else, another challenge. So it really does end up being more about the big picture, I think, than those like little moments.
Absolutely. I love that. So then on the flip side, what would you say your biggest failure as a player was?
Well, I have many I could list. I actually, I feel, and I share this more now that I've kind of had a little separation time, but I had some goals that I certainly did not meet. Like I wanted to make an Olympic team and a World Cup team. I definitely wanted to solidify my spot on the national team more than I was able. And I actually feel like I didn't ever really feel that satisfied with my professional career and what I did at the national team level. I think I wasn't quite able to translate a lot of the technical skills and skills that I had learned over the years and were able to use in like small-sided type environments and environments when I played with boys and men. I wasn't ever able to really translate them properly, I think, to the professional level. And so I personally feel that I fell short of what I would have expected from myself as a professional player and in terms of with the national team. I mean, that's hard to say because I think I might have felt like that no matter what panned out. But at the time in which I had to stop playing because of my illness, I felt like I was still getting better and like something was starting to click. So it was kind of an unfortunate time. I was still an older player. Like I didn't have that much time left realistically, but I think if I had a few more years, I was still like seeking something in terms of my personal development that I never quite attained.
Okay. And then going along with personal development, and how much would you say you trained on your own to really get to the highest level, like as a kid, as a high school player, as a college player?
Yeah. So I think, people often ask that, like, how much do you need to train on your own? And I think what it's really important for players to understand is that it's a cumulative effect. So throughout my time as a player, I trained thousands and thousands of hours on my own, but I was never doing anything that felt so extreme. I never went out and would train for 4 hours or something like that on a day. It was always 45 minutes here, an hour and a half there when I didn't have training, off season, summer away from college, every day working on things on my own. That's when I put in a lot of hours because in college you have that like long off season time. But really throughout the rest of my career, if it wasn't an off season, it was just those little 15 minutes here before training, 30 minutes of long balls after training, like those kind of things that really add up over the years. So I certainly spent a lot of time on my own, against striking the ball against a schoolyard wall, juggling, dribbling, doing all those things. But I think it's misleading because people think like, oh, it's overwhelming. I have to go out and do hours and hours of work. You do, but hopefully over 20 years of time in a career. And I think that's what is most important, the consistency over time.
Yeah. And I think that the consistency is really what separates the average players from the best players and anything in life, whether it's a business or whatever you're trying to achieve. It's all about consistency. So I love that you said that. It's not about going out there and training for 4 hours here and there. It's just putting in the small steps consistently. So thank you for that. So kind of moving on to Techne Futbol and kind of player development. First question I have for you regarding that is, what inspired you to start Techne Futbol?
Yeah, so I always was interested in sharing, like I said, all those hours I spent on my own over the years, like that was inspired by coaches and mentors who showed me like, okay, here's how you strike the ball properly, or you want to be a pro? Well, you got to learn to juggle. And okay, now you can juggle comfortably. No, now here's a challenge. Like use different surfaces. Like there was always something I was being shown or coming up with that left me like if I go out with the ball on my own, I could think of literally hundreds of things to do, and everything I think of to do, like it spins off into three more ideas. Like, well, what if I do it with the outside of my foot, or what if I then back up and do the same thing? And so I think for me, I've always enjoyed sharing those ideas because I feel like I've been fortunate to have people help me think creatively about ways to get better on my own. And it's a super empowering part of the process of anything you do in life, is to feel like you can go away, whether you've been successful or not, go away and get better on your own, and then come back to the group and like have improved more than other people maybe. So for me, Techne Futbol is all about sharing that experience. One, the ideas of actually like what to do in your training so that you don't go out and do the same thing every time. If you want to spend those hours, it takes a lot of creativity to come up with exciting things to do to fill the amount of time you need to spend with the ball over the years. And then from that, kind of helping players to embark on the process that I feel like I was really fortunate to have been set off on, is that process of mastery and understanding, like learning skills and feeling them click and then fine tuning them over time. And so for me, I've always enjoyed sharing training videos, whether it's on YouTube, social media, and Techne is my way of kind of pulling it all together into a resource that teaches players how to learn the right skills, but also like how to learn and how to get better on their own.
Absolutely. And how long did it take you to develop the app?
Yeah, so I will say right up, I am not a technology person. I do not do the coding or the development. I had this idea for probably about a year, and I remember I was playing around with it. I had all these notes of like, how was I going to do this? Was it going to be like PDF documents? Was it going to be a YouTube playlist? Like I was trying to find the easiest way to kind of create this product. And I then had a conversation with who ended up being my co-founder, Sam. Well, her name at the time is Sam Weber, but now Ugalava is her new married name. But she was a soccer player too, and also involved in the tech world, and was like, oh, well, I know a freelance developer. And so we launched the company together, and she was hugely helpful to connect me with understanding like, okay, you need a developer. Here are some of the things you need to do. Here's how you build a website, like all the basic things that you need to do to start a business and to get a product made. That was like another world to me. So that part of the process probably took about, from my first conversation with Sam, which was in January, we ended up launching in October. So a long time, but not, I mean, it was a very basic piece of technology, the first version. So it could have taken longer.
No, I'm surprised that it didn't take you longer, because I mean, I feel like, oh, that's just like way over my head. Like you said, have no idea about developing an app or anything like that. But when you first launched the app, like, what was the library of videos? Like, was it pretty small, or did you already have kind of a big library of videos?
Yeah, so I would say the content piece is what I started working on well before that. And I spent a ton of time filming. I mean, there was one off season of my pro season where I was like out filming hours and hours each day. And the lucky thing for me is that I could demonstrate a lot of the drills. So like I did call in other pros to help. And over time, I definitely want the drill library to incorporate others. But for me, when you need to get a ton of ideas into video format, like it's best if you could just do it yourself. So I literally had my tripod, my iPad, my phone as a second angle, another camera. And by the time we launched, I had a significant drill library because I didn't want to have to be stressed to create that stuff as time went on. And for those of you who are unfamiliar with the product, I create a weekly training session each week that I basically pull from this drill library that I had created. And since that time, I've certainly added to it. Now it's pretty substantial. It's definitely over 1,000 drills. And most of that was done, I would say, the majority of it was done before the company launched. The product itself, when we launched, was very bare bones, but the drill library was pretty established.
No, yeah, I'm sure like over the years you've had, lots of updates to the app and changing things and making everything more streamlined. And even now, like you guys are adding the goalkeeper sessions and the indoor goalkeeper sessions. And there's just, every time I look on there, it's like, wow, there's something new in the strength training, which I was so excited to see that, because now I used to give my girls the strength exercises, and now I'm like, hey, go do your Techne strength exercises, and they love it. Like every week I'm like, hey, do you want me to give you exercises, or do you want to do it on Techne? And they're like, I want to do it on Techne. So I'm like, okay, that's awesome. Like less work for me, and I think they're awesome. So I'm
I
like,
appreciate it.
yeah. My
That's
kids,
the idea though too, is that like hopefully coaches, you do what you do with them in person, you inspire them to do it, but then you can outsource the rest. And that's kind of what we work very hard on, is always making sure there's plenty so that the players can be self-sufficient on that part of things, and then trust their coaches for the group stuff, the mentoring, the motivation. All of that is like certainly important in person, but everything else the players can do on their own.
right. Like I've seen a huge difference since we started working together, with me giving them homework to do on their own. And it's like, I don't really know if they're doing it or not. Whereas now when they're using Techne, I go on there every week and I can see who's training, and we create these competitions. And there's one girl, I wish I could look, but she has like a 63-day streak. And
That's
like,
awesome.
it's amazing how much she's trained. And so I know that my kids love it. But what is like your favorite part of seeing kids using it and getting better from it? Like, what is the most fulfilling part for you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think I didn't quite, like when I was a kid, I always joke, and I joke with my like best friends and teammates, like we're all a little psycho. Like anyone who really takes this upon themselves and is going to train on their own and do this, you got to have something a little like crazy up there. And like for me to see all the little psychos out there, and I mean this in the most loving way possible, but like the players who we have somebody with over 1,000-day training streak,
Oh my.
and players who are training like so consistently and will email us in a panic because they're going on a cruise and they don't have Wi-Fi, and how are they going to do their training? And like, just, I think to see like how people have attached themselves to it is really, really rewarding for me, because it's how I've always felt about the game. Like there was a period of time where I did not miss a day of training. I trained every day, to the point where like I would be in a panic. If we were going on vacation, I would have my mini ball or something, and I would find my time to do it. And it was like kind of stressful, but in a positive way. And so to see other players embodying that same like passion towards, they need to do their training and they're super serious about it and they're really dedicated and consistent, I think is very, very cool for me. So I always joke, I say it's our little family of psychos.
It's so funny because I'll look at some of their, like the main leaderboard, and I'll be, oh my gosh, like how do they train that much? Like, do they have a life? But it's just about, being consistent, which is so cool. So like you talk about like owning your development, like own your development. You talk about that a lot, right? So how do you teach, I guess a two-part question is, how do you teach players, or like, what would you say to a player about how to own their development?
Yeah, I think the main thing is that, one, you need to understand like what your goals are and what it takes to get there. So a lot of players say like, oh, I want to play professionally. Like if I go to a clinic, I say, who wants to play for the national team? Everyone raises their hand. But the reality is like, do you understand what that looks like and the body of work that goes into getting you there? That's number one. And I think that having that vision and the understanding of what it actually takes, and like we said earlier, it's not 4 hours in any given day. It's a body of work over time. You're going to have to spend the next 20 years of your life committed to getting better every single day. And I think having that understanding is number one. And then the second part is, for players, letting them to understand that you're not going to have all the answers and there's not one right path, but like the resources are out there, whether it's the Techne app, whether it's a expert for strength and conditioning, whether it's somebody to help guide and mentor you and you're going through an injury and you need physical therapy, whatever it is, like the expertise is out there now with the internet and YouTube and everything. Like it's all public. You can search anything and find somebody to help you. You can find players who have done what you're trying to do before, who live in your area and have made it to the top level. And so I think owning your development is about having that understanding, like the goal and the understanding behind it, but then sourcing the assistance. Like nobody does it on their own. So what I hope that the players understand is you have this vision, you have a clear understanding of what it takes, but then it's about like piecing it together as you go. There's no like, you can't draw out the whole roadmap from start to finish. You figure it out as you go.
Right. And then what would you say? So I'm sure you get a lot of coaches that come to you as well and ask you, like, how do I motivate my players to train on their own? So what would you say, because there's a lot of coaches that listen to this as well, what would you say to coaches who are trying to figure out how to teach their players to train on their own and own their development?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. And this is actually with Techne, when we work with teams and clubs, this is part of what we speak to them about is like, okay, so your players have access to the resource, but how do you, how do you motivate them and how do you build momentum with this and make it part of their soccer experience that they come to practice? Well, usually not right now, obviously, but they come to practice a couple times a week. They have their game on the weekend, and then that they do this on their own as well. And I think a big part of it is it's twofold. It's one, having the players understand what to do. So have the ideas and the creativity to think like, okay, well, I need to pass. I need to work on passing and receiving, but I don't have a partner. Okay, well, now I can find a wall.
Yeah.
Or maybe a curb, or like the creative thinking. So helping to spark the creative thinking in them by showing them ways to practice things and having them come up with ways as well. So they're not just following a plan, they're thinking like, oh, well, I know my weakness is this, so maybe I should do this slightly differently to kind of cater to my own needs. So there's that. And then I think it's also about allowing the players to understand a clear expectation. And this is what we really work with coaches on, is a manageable expectation. So to just go tell players, hey, go train on your own, that's very ambiguous for a kid.
Yeah.
Like they don't know what that means. But if they understand, I'm supposed to spend between now and next time I see my coach, I'm supposed to spend 30 minutes working on something in a focused way. Well, now they can go and they can do that. And with the Techne app or not, they can actually record it to make sure they were diligent. They met their 30 minutes. It's reasonable. We're not saying hours and hours, but so they understand how to train and how much they should be training in a very specific way. And that will allow them then to really, I think when players feel that first like inkling that they can make themselves better, then they get hooked, but it's about helping them to get hooked.
Absolutely. And what changes have you seen, if any, since, COVID? Have you seen changes with players training more? Obviously, I know a lot of more teams have been reaching out to you, but have you seen a lot of positive changes with kids using Techne since this has been going on?
Yeah, I mean, our usage is significantly up during this time. With one, like you said, teams and clubs have reached out and got on board. We've signed up a lot of groups during this time, but then also players are logging a ton of time in the app. And I think the important thing is it is positive, but what I'm hoping will happen from this is that players will gain an understanding of how to do this on their own, because it's not, you don't just need to train on your own when you can't train with the group. This is what you should be doing all the time. So obviously the volume will go down a little. You're not going to be training an hour every day on your own, but maybe you're doing an hour a week throughout the week when you're back with your team. So if we can use this time to teach players how to have that creative thought process and how to understand how to train on their own, my hope is that it can continue and be part of our soccer culture in this country, moving past this time.
Yeah, and it's something that, like, if they can develop the habit of consistently training on their own now, like, hopefully, obviously in the summer they don't have school, they should still be training a ton. But once, school hits in the fall, like, hopefully they've instilled those habits to where they know every day they go out there and, juggle for 10 minutes or whatever it is. So yeah, I think we'll definitely see a drop off, but hopefully at least the serious players, they're going to continue to use it because they've learned what it takes, and what to do. So I love that. So kind of my last question for you is, what is one piece of advice you would give to an athlete who wants to make it to either like a high level college team or the pro level?
Yeah, I think I have two pieces actually, even though that wasn't a question. I'll cheat and answer with two pieces of advice. One is, I kind of mentioned this earlier, it's like you need a clear picture of what your goal looks like. So it's easy to say you have a goal, but like, what does that look like? Go watch a college game in person. Ask if you could do a training session with a player playing in college. Same thing with pro. You want to play pro? Go to a pro game. Go see if you can watch a pro team train. Like, you need to have an image of where you're trying to go. It's like if you're a painter and someone says, paint a penguin, and you've never seen a penguin, like, you can't possibly recreate it. So you have to have the clear image of what it looks like. And the more you can see it, the more it will reinforce for you what you're trying to do. And then I think secondly, like I mentioned as well, is what gets players to the top level is what they do well. So yes, you should try to be well-rounded, work on your weaknesses, but at the end of the day, figure out what makes you different. Like what is the value you bring to the team? Maybe it's you have an awesome personality and you make everyone laugh and you have great energy. Maybe you're a workhorse type player, a great tackler. Maybe you're amazing at heading and you score on headers and corner kicks all the time, or that you're a great distributor of the ball or can beat someone on the dribble anytime. Whatever it is that you do well is what's going to get you to the top level. It's not going to be your weaknesses. Those hopefully won't hold you back and you'll work on them. But I think identifying what makes you special is really, really important. And that will be what takes you to the next level.
I love that. So first one for a little recap is clarity. So you got to know where you're going, right? And the second thing is to find that special thing. Like for me, it was heading. I wasn't that great at anything else, but that's how I got recruited was my heading. So find something that you're really good at and be the best at it. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that. So where can people connect with you and with Techne Futbol and learn more about Techne Futbol? A lot of people already have it, but if they don't have it, where can they go to learn more about Techne?
Yeah, so I think I'll spell Techne Futbol, and then we can also, I think my name will, I'm sure, be on this. I know my name is complicated, but if you look up TECHNEFUTBOL on social media, or you go to technefutbol.com, there's all the information there. We're really easy to get in touch with if you contact us through the website or anything. Happy to answer any questions. But yeah, I think social media and our website is the best place for Techne. And then also for myself, I have social media and I have a website where I have a blog that I need to write more. I haven't done any recently, but I have a blog that might be interesting to players or coaches or people kind of going through this process and on their own soccer journey. And if you do spell my name correctly, you probably won't find too many others with the same name. So you should be able to find me.
Yeah, I'll make sure to post. I'll post all the Techne stuff and your stuff on all the social media channels. So thanks guys so much for listening. And Yael, thank you so much for coming on. It was an absolute pleasure. And I will talk to you guys on next week's episode.
Yeah, thanks. I enjoyed the conversation.